few nights ago, I was at my house and just trying to relax. I live alone in a small town out in New Jersey by the coast. It was one of those nights where the rain was coming down so hard, it felt like the world outside did not exist anymore. The thunder was so loud, it was rattling the windows, and the lightning was bright enough to light up the whole room. Now, I'm not usually one to get scared, but there was something unsettling about the storm and how vicious it was outside. Still, I had my horror movies queued up on Netflix, and I figured a little tension might make them more exciting. About halfway through The Conjuring 2, around 11:30 p.m., I heard it, a knock at the door. At first, I thought surely it was just the storm, and it was playing tricks on my imagination. But then it came again, 3 solid knocks. No way in hell was I expecting anyone at this hour, especially in this kind of weather. I paused the movie and just sat there for a minute, wondering what to do. I did not want to answer it, but I also didn't want to just sit there, wondering all night who or what could be out there. So I got up, grabbed my pocket knife just in case, and slowly made my way to the door. I peeked through the peephole, but all I could see was darkness and rain. There was no movement, nothing. I took a deep breath and opened the door a crack, expecting some prank or maybe a package delivered to the wrong address. But no. Sitting on my wet doormat was a doll. It was extremely old, worn out, and dirty, with matted hair and a faded red dress. It was the kind of doll that you'd find in an abandoned house. My first thought was that some kid had left it as a joke, but then I noticed the note attached to its hand. It was a piece of crumpled up paper, and in shaky handwriting, it said, "I see you." This freaked the hell out of me. I looked up and down my street to see if anyone was hiding behind my car or a tree, but the storm was so violent that it was impossible to see. I stood there for a few seconds, trying to figure out what to do. Was someone messing with me, or was this some kind of warning? I did not want to deal with it, so I just grabbed the doll and the note and ran down my driveway to toss them in my trash bin. I went back inside, drenched, locked the door, and double-checked the windows, trying to convince myself that it was just a weird prank. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was now being watched, just like the note had said. I turned off the movie, as I was too horrified as it was. I climbed into bed and tried to sleep, but every little noise made me jump. I was on edge the whole night and was barely able to get any rest. Morning and sunlight couldn't come fast enough. When it finally did, I felt stupid for letting a doll and a note get to me like that. Maybe it was the sunlight coming through my windows and the storm being over, but I felt so silly for being so terrified. I decided to go and make my morning coffee, laughing at myself for being so scared last night. But when I walked into the living room, I froze. There, sitting in the middle of my coffee table, was the doll. That same dirty, worn-out doll I'd thrown away the night before. And next to it was another note. This one read, "You can't get rid of me." I stared at it, not sure what to do. I was positive that someone had broken in, but nothing else was out of place. No sign of forced entry, and my door was still locked. The windows were all shut too. It didn't make any sense. I don't know how the hell the doll got back inside, but I am absolutely terrified at this point. Call me crazy, but one of my friends is a practicing witch, and I asked her to come over and see if she could bless my house. They're calling for a thunderstorm this weekend in my area, so please pray for me. 2 years ago, I had the worst experience of my entire life. I was 27 at the time, and I had my own home out in northern Kentucky. We were known for getting some pretty intense storms, and that night, it was a very violent storm outside. The rain was so loud on my roof, and the thunder felt like God himself was banging on my home. But I always took comfort during storms. I know some people are freaked out by them, but they're oddly calming to me. So, I did what I normally do during any storm. I cozy up with a blanket and a good book, and I sit at my living room window and read and watch the storm. It wasn't too late, maybe 8 or 9 o'clock at night, but it was so black outside because of the storm raging on. I was just reading away and just enjoying the wet night when I felt my phone vibrate. I put down my book and checked my phone. It was a text from some out-of-state number that I did not recognize. Now, I'm used to spam calls and messages, and I'm sure I'm not alone on this, and that's all I figured this text was. I wasn't going to open it and just delete it, but I noticed the text was a picture. Curious, I studied it and realized that it was a picture of my house from an outside angle by my mailbox. It was also taken during a storm, and I quickly realized that the picture was in real time. Unnerved, I sat up in my seat and looked out my window. It was very hard to see as the rain was streaking down the glass and how black it was outside. Normally, I would chalk this kind of stunt up to a joke or something, but I don't think any sane person would be out in a storm just for a quick laugh. I was seriously nervous about this photo. I got up and made sure all my doors and windows were locked and secure. I went back to the window and tried to see if I could see anyone outside. As I was looking out, my phone vibrated again. It was a text message this time. It said, "Locking your doors won't help you." Another text came through. "I'm already inside." Just then, I looked out my window. Standing right behind the glass was a man. He had long black hair that was matted to his face. He had his face pressed up against the glass and was looking right at me. He started tapping on the window, and I saw that he was trying to push it up. My spirit nearly left my body. I jumped off my window ledge, grabbed my phone, and ran upstairs to my room. I locked it and pushed my dresser in front of it. Crying, I called my boyfriend and frantically explained what was going on. While I was waiting for him to get there, I could have sworn I heard that man continuing to tap on my window from downstairs. Thankfully, within 10 minutes, despite the crazy storm outside, my boyfriend arrived. He brought his gun with him and checked everywhere outside, under the car, in my trees, and any spot that somebody could be hiding in. He did not find anyone. I showed him the texts, and he called the number. He found the phone in the bush right outside the window he was staring at me from. It was a burner phone you could buy at Walmart for like $10. I ended up packing up my bags that night and went to spend the remainder of the night at my boyfriend's place. I wish there was a happy ending to the story, but there isn't. We never found out who that man was or how he had gotten my number. I've since married my boyfriend, and we now live together in a different part of town, where I feel very protected with him. But, like I said, this was the worst experience of my entire life. I've never really talked about this before, but tonight, after a few beers, I feel like I need to get this off my chest. It happened when I was about 10 years old. We lived in a small, 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood. My parents worked long hours, and I was used to being alone after school until they got home. I never really minded. I liked the quiet, and our house was my safe space. Until that night. There was a massive thunderstorm that evening. It was the kind that shakes the whole house with every rumble. The rain came down so hard that it sounded like rocks were being thrown at the roof. I remember sitting in the living room, watching Goosebumps, when the power went out. The whole house plunged into darkness, and the only light was from the occasional flash of lightning. My parents lit some candles and told me not to worry. We ended up all going to bed early since there wasn't much else to do. I was scared, but I figured I'd be safe under my blankets. That's what you believe when you're a kid, right? That nothing can get you if you're under the covers. I must have fallen asleep for a few hours before something woke me up. It was the sound of the wind howling outside, combined with the crashes of thunder. My heart was pounding as I lay there in my dark bedroom, listening to the storm outside. I remember laying there, trying to calm myself down, telling myself it's just the storm, but I couldn't fall back asleep. I was thirsty, and the thought of getting some water gave me a reason to leave my bed. I grabbed my flashlight from the nightstand, careful not to wake my parents, and crept out of my room. The hallway was pitch black, and the house felt eerily silent, except for the storm raging on outside. Every step I took seemed to echo, and my breathing was louder than I wanted it to be. I was trying not to freak myself out, but it wasn't working. When I reached the top of the stairs, I hesitated. Something felt off, but I told myself I was just being paranoid. I slowly made my way down, one step at a time, the old wooden stairs creaking under my weight. When I reached the bottom, I shone my flashlight around, and everything seemed normal. I headed to the kitchen, trying to be as quiet as possible. I just wanted to get my water and get back to bed. But when I walked into the kitchen, I froze. There was a figure standing by the sink. My heart stopped for a second, but then I relaxed a little, thinking it was my dad. "Dad?" I whispered. The figure did not move. I called out again. "Dad?" I shone my flashlight on the figure, and I saw him clearly. It was not my dad. He was a very tall man, dressed in dark, soaked clothes, his hair hanging wet over his face. He was just standing there, staring at the window. My flashlight shook in my hand, and I realized I was standing in front of a stranger in my own house. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My feet felt like they were glued to the floor. But then, somehow, I forced myself to move. I turned and ran as fast as I could back up the stairs. I didn't look back, not once. I burst into my parents' room, finally finding my voice. I screamed, telling them there was someone in the house. My dad grabbed a golf club and ran downstairs, but when he got there, the kitchen was empty. The back door was wide open, rain pouring in from the storm outside. The police came, searched the house and the yard, but they didn't find anyone. They said it was probably just a homeless guy looking for shelter from the storm, but that didn't make me feel any better. I knew what I saw. That man was in my kitchen, in my house, and he was never caught. I still think about it sometimes, especially on stormy nights. I never found out who he was or what he wanted, but every time there's a thunderstorm, I remember that feeling of pure terror, and I double check every lock in the house.